In Congress yesterday, the House overwhelmingly rejected Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's push to push Speaker Mike Johnson out of his job.
A vote to kill the motion passed 359 to 43, with just 10 Republicans voting with Greene.
House Speaker Mike Johnson joins us right now. Mr. Speaker, you tried to avoid this by meeting with Marjorie Taylor Greene for about 2.5 hours and Thomas Massie. They went ahead anyway. Your thoughts about surviving, but that this vote actually took place, too?
Yeah, it was unfortunate that it did. Look, I appreciate the overwhelming show of confidence by my colleagues to defeat that misguided effort. Here's what I have to do every day, Brian. I have to do my job. I have to do what I know to be right. We advance our conservative policies and principles as far as we can here every single day up the field, in spite of the fact that we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. We can't get 100% of what we want, and sometimes a handful of my colleagues demand that. It's just not possible right now. But we're fighting. We're going to get this job done, and I think that's leadership. Leadership in very difficult times.
Well, these are very complicated times to be a speaker. We know what happened to Kevin McCarthy. He just had a couple. But what happened to him that didn't happen to you is the fact that you were essentially bailed out by a number of Democrats. Democrats didn't help him. They helped you. Why?
Well, I think the Democrats believe in the institution, and they see exactly what we see and the American people see. These are dangerous times, and the country desperately needs a functioning Congress. We can't afford the risk of shutting the House down, which is literally what happened last time. Imagine if we closed the House in the middle of hot wars around the globe, when China could move on Taiwan, Iran could fire a nuke at Israel. I mean, you know, anything could happen right now, and we need to be working here every day. The chaos and confusion do nothing but diminish our chances to save this country and hurt our cause. And we are fighting every single day to reverse all those terrible things that you just recounted that President Biden's done to the country. We have to keep the Republicans together, moving together as a team. And when we do that, I'm convinced, you guys, we're going to grow the majority in November. We're going to take back the Senate, and Donald Trump's going to be returned to the White House. And when that happens, we will be able to turn this thing 180 degrees.
Now, Mr. Speaker, in a rare sit-down interview yesterday, Joe Biden said that he is going to stop shipments of bombs and artillery shells to Israel if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders more invasions of Rafah and the Gaza Strip into the population areas. What's your reaction? Didn't you?
Listen,
I mean, y'all said we're giving you money for these weapons, send these weapons over. Is he able to do this without Congress?
Ainsley, he's defying the will of Congress, and he's defying what his own top officials in the White House assured me in writing and verbally before that supplemental was passed, and even in the days since. This idea of withholding weapons to Israel as a condition of somehow, you know, Joe Biden wanted to micromanage their war effort over there, their defensive effort, is catastrophic policy. It would be devastating to our closest ally in the region, and it would go directly against the will of what the members of this body voted on just several days ago. So they've got to answer to the American people and answer to us, and we're on that right now.
But in the meantime, the Prime Minister says we're going into Rafah, and the President says we're not sending the arms shipments. This is not the new money. This is old shipments that were en route there anyway. They're precision weapons that would have helped, and here they talk about not being precise enough. What is the reality on the ground? Is the IDF being ham-handed in how they're bombing and doing this war? Or are we going by Hamas numbers? And therefore, it looks like civilians are the target.
That is what it looks like, and Hamas, of course, uses civilians as shields, which is why they're jeopardized. I talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu myself about 48 hours ago about this very issue, and I confirmed from him exactly what's going on. What they need and what is in that shipment, as you noted, Brian, is precision weapons. That is to help them protect civilians. So this is completely counterproductive, and it's really, really dangerous.
Well, you know what's going on, Speaker. This is, you know, we're sitting 6 months away from an election. And Joe Biden is underwater. You know, he's tanking when it comes to these college protests and stuff like that. And the protests are for one reason, to get Joe Biden to not support Israel. And essentially, by denying Israel these weapons that they need to go ahead and finish the job, our president is holding Israel hostage so that he gets reelected.
This is true to form for Joe Biden, Steve, right? I mean, this is what he's done. He appeases Iran and criticizes Israel. It should be exactly the opposite of that. And now he's appeasing these anti-Semitic, hateful, pro-Hamas crowds. You know, I went to Columbia University myself to see this on the ground. These students are waving flags for Hezbollah and Hamas, terrorist organizations. Some of them deny that October 7th happened and all the tragedies there. I mean, it's an absolute maddening set of circumstances, and the president is refusing to speak with moral clarity to the issue, and that's why it continues to grow across the country.
Is he selling out? I mean, it appears that he is pulling back these weapons. He was pro-Israel before. Now he sees what's happening in Michigan and Wisconsin with the uncommitted votes. Is he selling out because of votes to win this election?
Everyone can see, Ainsley, that this is a political decision that he is making. He is terrified of the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. But let me tell you something. This is a time when the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, who has the largest bully pulpit in America, this is a time when we desperately need the president to speak clearly, with clarity and conviction and consistency about right versus wrong. This is about good versus evil. It truly is. And if he is unable or unwilling to do that, he needs to step aside. We have got to get a president back in that White House, and I believe it'll be Donald Trump, who will look right into the camera and tell the bad guys to stand down. That's what we need right now, and Biden won't do it. And
just, by the way, if you want to see what's going on in the Democratic Party, people like to talk to the chaos in your party, and you have it. But Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib yesterday at GWU condemning Biden and condemning America and condemning Israel, calling them genocide, saying what they're doing is genocide. These are Democrats siding with the encampment. So they're at each other's throats, and he's trying to split the difference, perhaps. So I will try to move on, if we can, to immigration. The President of the United States knows it's a disaster, knows the border has collapsed, so he's going to do some executive order asylum changes been floated. Amongst them would apply to migrants seeking asylum. It's going to get a little bit tougher. Allow denials at initial screening stage at border rather than interview stage, and allows us to expedite removal of migrants due to security risks. Very vague, but it shows he's taking action. Your thoughts?
Window dressing, too little, too late. Joe Biden is also unwilling and unable to fix the border crisis that he intentionally created. This is a catastrophe, as we all know. We presented to him a menu of options many months ago. I did the morning after I became Speaker of the House. 8 separate statutes, executive orders that he could and should take, and he has refused to do it. And now, Brian, I think we've got 16 million illegals in the country since he walked into the Oval Office and started issuing those other executive orders to open it wide. We're going to be dealing with this as a catastrophe and an extreme danger to our homeland for the foreseeable future. And it is his fault, and everybody in America knows it.
Well, you know, Mr. Speaker, a lot of the migrants would be just in Texas and down along our southern border for the most part, had it not been for Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas's idea. You know what? Let's share the problem. Let's bus these people to sanctuary cities, particularly big media cities, and now it is a story that everybody is talking about, and you just see the people coming in, and now we've got a problem with crime and all sorts of stuff. And it's really bad. Joe Biden's got to look like he's doing something, but we just had Tom Homan on and said there's nothing to this.
Oh, yeah. As I said, it's window dressing. He could use Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act today and close the border entirely. He knows he has that authority. I have read it to President Biden myself. First, he refused to accept that it was actually the law, which is nonsense, and then he refused to use it. If he really wanted to close the border, he would reinstate Remain in Mexico. That's what the Border Patrol says, reduce the flow by 70%.
How did you explain that that interchange between you and Joe Biden where you read it to him?
Yeah, on the phone and in person. I have talked him through the language of that, and on the phone I read him the actual provision from the law. If the president deems it to be in the interest of the country, he can close all entry at the border entirely. He could close it down. And he won't do that. And I'll tell you why he won't do it. Because you know why? They want to turn these people into voters, and they want to change the outcome of the census. We all know that now to be the actual truth.
Because they'll count people even if you don't vote. Mr. Speaker, lastly, the President of the United States, the former president who wants to be the next president, said one of his plans is, he talked to Time Magazine, is to round up the 11 to 15 million illegals and then go through them and find out who belongs here and who doesn't. Would you support that?
Absolutely. And President Trump and I have talked about this at length. But the challenge we'll have is finding them, Brian. As you know, they've been spread out everywhere. DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and Mayorkas, the reason we impeached him is because he's an abject failure, and they're not keeping track of where these people are. So we will have the greatest challenge of our generation to try to find them, to round them up first. And that's a very serious problem.
Well, we know where the hotels are. We could point you there. We could help in New York City.
There's that.
16 million number that you said under Biden. That could be a lot higher. There are a lot of them that have come over. We've seen the images, and we don't know where they are. We don't know who they are. Gotaways.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, final question. Ending with what we started with. Are the threats to your speakership over now for this term?
Well, look, it was an overwhelming landslide outcome. I mean, I think the message is sent. We have serious work to do, y'all. There are two competing visions for the country. We are fighting to save America and preserve its founding principles, to get Donald Trump back to the White House and to win the majority in the Senate and the House for the Republican Party so that we can fix all of these extreme challenges. We have no time for nonsense here. We got to get the job done.
What Marjorie Taylor Greene's doing, do you look at nonsense after 2.5 hours? Do you think she's a serious legislator?
Look, I'm going to let other people judge, Marjorie. I've got to work with all my colleagues
What a
here.
politician.
I'm not mad at anybody. No, I'm not a politician. I'm trying to approach this as a Christian.
Okay, you're a diplomat.
Look, I don't hold grudges. I got to work with everybody. And I told her last night before we left the floor, let's move on, Marjorie. I'm okay with this. Let's move on.
And what'd she say?
I think we'll have an opportunity to do that. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, you interpreted, I guess, her not answer.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But you have President Trump's backing, and I think that certainly helps times like this.
And clearly the backing of a lot of others.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.